Hey, everybody, and welcome back to U.S. History. So today we're talking about what happened once the United States joined the war. So go ahead and get your notes out, and let's get started. So America mobilizing. It's important to note that the United States did not join World War I until the last year of the war, and we weren't ready to go to war. We only had 200,000 enlisted men in the military, and most of them had seen no combat. So Congress passed what is known as the Selective Service Act, which required men to register with the government in order to be randomly selected for service. 24 million men registered, 3 million were then selected for service, 2 million were sent to Europe, and 1.5 million saw combat. We still have the Selective Service Act today. So, gentlemen, when you turn 18 years old, you have to register with the draft in case they need to draft people into the military. So it was difficult to transport supplies and men as well, and the U.S. massively expanded the naval fleet to make sure that we could take care of ourselves. So as a part of that, shipyard workers were actually exempted from the draft because we needed them here to build ships. They began to utilize a lot of mass production and all that stuff, and the government turned private ships into military ships, essentially just equipping cargo boats with weapons. Now, they had 95 ships that were launched in one day as a result of mass production. That massively bulked up the U.S. Navy. So we did turn the tide pretty quickly, and this was mainly due to the use of the convoy system. This protected merchant ships that were accompanied by destroyers, and 634 of 2 million men were lost to U-boat attacks. The convoy system prevented the U-boats from being able to destroy these ships. Also, a series of underwater mines blocked the U-boats from access to the Atlantic. But it's also important to note by this point, by the time the U.S. joined the conflict, exhausted and demoralized. They had barely gained any ground, and they'd been fighting for 2.5 years, and things had not really changed. But they did discover that U.S. troops were really fresh and enthusiastic and excited to go. They also earned the nickname Doughboy, because compared to the French and British troops, our troops were still really well fed, coming straight from the United States. So they had a little bit of extra dough around their midsections, and hence the name, Doughboy. So when it came to fighting in Europe, there was a lot of new weapons used during this war that led to this being considered the first modern war. Things like machine guns, tanks, airplanes, and poison gas were used for the first time. But these new weapons brought with it new hazards, horrific injuries due to machine guns and airplanes. The trenches were filthy, filled with rats, lice, polluted water, trench foot, in which your feet have been submerged underwater so long they start to shrivel up and the skin sloshes right off. Constant bombardment from enemy forces, shell shock, and then trench foot, like I already mentioned. So Russia pulled out of the war in 1917 to go fight their own civil war. They were dealing with a lot of issues at home. Them pulling out meant that the Eastern Front. So the Germans shifted their entire army to the Western Front. Now, on the plus side, the U.S. had arrived by then to stop these rejuvenated German advances, and the Allies won a series of victories. Now, by November of 1918, Austria-Hungary had surrendered, and on November 11th, 1918, Germany surrendered. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, an armistice or truce was signed. There was no real decisive battle bringing about the end of the war. It's just Germany could no longer sustain a resistance against the Allies, and the Allies won the war of attrition, or just constant bombardment. Now, the end of World War I is actually a holiday today in the United States. It's Veterans Day. So what you're going to do now is I should have handed out to you guys a big packet full of reading. You're going to be doing that. I'll see y'all next time. Bye, everyone.